In this video from ITFreeTraining, I will look at the different components in Active Directory Federation services. In particular, this video looks at what each component does rather than the features each version of Active Directory Federation services has. That I will leave to a different video. As shown, the components change depending on which version of Active Directory Federation services you are using. However, most of the changes are to the name or the location of the component. The first component is Active Directory Federation services. Windows Server 2012 R2 comes with version 3 of Federation services. The most noticeable difference is that Federation service is a role only with no separate components. When you install the role, you are not given the choice to install additional components like in previous versions. Version 2.1 of Active Directory Federation services was included with Windows Server 2012. The name of the role is Active Directory Federation services, and the main component is Federation services. So the main difference between this and version 3 is that the Federation service component is now a role rather than a component of a role. Version 2.0 was an optional download for Windows Server 2008. Version 1.1 was included with the operating system. Regardless of which version you use, Federation Services is a component of the Active Directory Federation Services role. So essentially, if you want to install the main part of Active Directory Federation Services, you would install the Active Directory Federation Services role and then select the Federation Service component. The next component that I will look at is the proxy component. I will have a closer look at this in a moment, but essentially it is installed on the DMZ and provides communication between the Internet and the Active Directory Federation server. In Windows Server 2012 R2, the big change is this component has been moved out of the Active Directory Federation services role and into the Remote Access role. The component is now called Web Application Proxy. It still provides the same basic functionality as it did in the previous versions. In all the previous versions of Active Directory Federation services, the component is called Federation Services Proxy and is part of the Active Directory Federation services role. The last component that I will look at is the web agents. In version 3.1 of ADFS, these web agents have been removed and are no longer available. In version 2.1 and previous versions, they are available as components of the Active Directory Federation services role. In a moment, I will have a closer look at the web agents, but essentially there is no real difference between the different versions of ADFS other than a small name change. In the later version of ADFS, the web agents have the version number of 1.1 in the name. So, in effect, regardless of what the version of the web agent is, they perform the same role and have the same features regardless of which version of ADFS you are using. I will now have a look at some of the functionality of these components. The first component I will have a closer look at is the Web Application Proxy. This component is new in Windows Server 2012 R2 and is a component of remote access rather than of the Active Directory Federation Services role. It has the same functionality as Federation Service Proxy and thus replaces it. The point to remember is that it has the same functionality but also has additional functionality. For example, it also allows applications to be published for remote access. This is not a feature that is required with Active Directory Federation services, but shows that this component can be used for things other than just for Active Directory Federation services. Regardless of what the component is called or where it is found in Server Manager, it performs the same basic task. If you consider that Active Directory Federation services needs to be on a server that is a member of the domain, an administrator will generally want to install an Active Directory Federation server on their internal network. If you have a user on the Internet that needs to access this server in order to obtain claims, you generally do not want a user directly accessing an internal network from the Internet. In the case of Active Directory Federation services, this user may not be an employee of your company. For this reason, an ADFS proxy server will normally be deployed between the user on the DMZ or the perimeter network and the internal network. To keep the networks safe, firewalls are placed between them. What will happen now is, when the user attempts to contact the Active Directory Federation server, they will instead contact the ADFS proxy server. The proxy server will pass the request onto the Active Directory Federation server. The Federation server will respond back to the proxy server. For example, if the user was requesting a claim, it would pass this claim to the proxy server. The proxy server will then send the result back to the user. Now that the user has the claim, they can use it to contact a claims-aware application, which will most likely be on the DMZ. You can see that the user at no time needs to contact the Active Directory Federation server directly. Also, the Active Directory Federation server needs to be a member of the domain, whereas the ADFS proxy does not need to be a domain member, which improves security. It should be pointed out that the user will use the same address to access the ADFS proxy server as they would if they were to contact the Active Directory Federation server directly. The ADFS proxy server essentially is transparent in the process. The next component that I will look at is the Active Directory Federation Services web agents. These are not available in ADFS 3.0 shipped with Windows Server 2012 R2. If you are running an earlier version of ADFS, you have two web agents to choose from. These are the Claims Aware agent and the Windows Token-based agent. The name of the component may be slightly different depending on which version of ADFS you are running. A third party may also provide their own agent. What they do is as follows. Let's say you have an application running on a server, and this server only accepts NT security tokens. You also have Active Directory Federation services running. The problem is that it creates a security token that has a claim in it. However, it is not an NT security token. To get around this, you have an agent running in between. This agent will take a security token issued by Active Directory Federation services with the claim inside and change it into an NT security token. This provides a way for claim-aware applications to work with Active Directory Federation services that only accept NT tokens. Windows NT-based authentication is quite old now, and this is probably why Microsoft removed this feature. The claims-aware agents were usually used with Internet Information Services. There are different ways to achieve this using different software that was previously not available, so may also be one of the reasons why Microsoft removed it. The point to remember is that if you are planning to use ADFS 3.0, these features are no longer available. Thanks for watching this video from ITFreeTraining. I hope that you found it informative. I hope to see you in other free videos from us for Active Directory Federation services and others. Until then, thanks for watching and see you next time.